I'm going to give you 5 things that I do every day to add value to people, okay? And this is going to work. This is going to work for you. And by the way, this is you. Every one of you can do this. Every one of you can do this. So look at your neighbor and say, even you can do this. Go ahead. All right? Even you. Because there are 5 things I do every day. Every day. You say, John, what do you mean by every day? I don't want to go too deep on you. Don't want to go over your head. I mean every day. Number 1, every day, I value people. And you say, okay, when you say you value people, I mean, who do you value? Everyone. And you say, what do you mean by everyone? Everyone. Jesus created everyone. What part of everyone do we not understand? Look at the person you're seated beside and say, Jesus loves you. Go ahead and tell them that. Jesus loves you. Look back and say, Jesus loves me. Yeah, he does. Look back at him and say, Jesus loves people I don't even know. Yeah, that's good. Oh, one more thing. Look at him and say, Jesus loves people I don't like. And let me tell you something. He loves people you don't like. He really does. If you look at the life of Jesus in the Gospels, the one thing you come after reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is that man valued everybody. And the only people who didn't like it were religious people. We've got to make a decision. Are we going to start connecting with people, or are we going to keep correcting people? We okay? My name's John. I'm your friend. So every day I value people, 1. Number 2, every day I think of ways to add value to people. Every day I think of ways to add value to people. About a month ago, I was talking to Stephen on the phone about me coming out here, and he said you were going to be in this vision series, and he was telling that the message that wouldn't be preached by the time I got here would be, I want to make a difference. I said, well, could I preach that message for you? And he said, well, sure, if you want. So I want to. I want to. What am I doing? Before I ever got here, a month before, I'm thinking of a way to add value to you. Add value to him. I mean, I could have said, no, I got my little sugar sticks I'd rather preach. No, I've never preached this before. I developed this message just for you today. It's all yours. It's the covenant message. Nobody else gets it. They don't get it. Now, it's very simple. Why? Because I think of ways of adding value to people. Number 3, every day I look for ways. I look for ways to add value to people. And let me say, you see what you anticipate. So when you anticipate of adding value to people, you start seeing ways to add value to people. Just as if most people, they don't get up in the morning and say, how can I add value to people? Most people get up in the morning and say, who's going to add value to me? We're all selfish. Are you with me? And if you don't think you're selfish, outside of the fact you don't think, if you don't think you're selfish, let me ask you a very simple question. The next time you're in a group picture, when you see that group picture, could I ask you a question? Who is the first person you look for in that picture? Now, come on now. Hey, and if you look bad, you say, oh, terrible picture, bad picture. Back here, come on, do it again. Come on, group, come on. Do it one more time. Yeah, come on. And if you look good in the picture, you say, oh, great picture. Send that to you. Yeah. That's why in adding value to people, you have to be intentional. Because it's not natural. The selfish nature of us is, who's going to do something for me today? But the Jesus that created us and empowers us and saves us, he wants us to add value to people. Every day, I value people, think of ways to add value to people. Look for ways to add value to people. Number 4, I do things. Every day, I do things that add value to people. Every day, I do things that add value to people. Every day. Every day. Margaret and I have 5 grandchildren. They call Margaret Mimi. They call me Papa. Margaret picked the names. For the first grandchild, she said, what are the grandkids going to call us? I said, I have no clue. It's not really been on the top of my agenda. Well, she said, I've been thinking about it. She said, I want them to call me Mimi. Well, I said, I like that. But she said, I don't want them to call you Pee-Pee. I said, I agree with that too. I don't want them to call me Pee-Pee. So they call me Papa. They call me Papa. I love that name. Every year I ask God to give me a word for the year. And my word this year is Father. And I just want to be a father. I want to be they've got great fathers, but I want to be a spiritual. I want to be a Stephen. For you and Erica, I want to be a spiritual father to you. I want to oversee and love and care for and bless you. I want to be a father. I want to be a papa. And so James, who was 9 at the time, because I'm asking him all the time, okay, how are we going to add value to people? Because they know this. They know this lesson. Trust me, they know this lesson. And James, who was 9, said, I know what I'm going to do, Papa. He said, tomorrow when we go to school, I'm going to open doors for everybody. And I'm going to not only open doors, I'm going to smile and say, have a good day. Next evening, he called me. He said, Papa, I had a great day. Tell me about it, James. He said, I opened 47 doors today for people, and I smiled 47 times and said, have a good day. He's 9 years old, and he's already got it figured out. I know people. Come on now. He's already got it figured out. I know people, they're 79, and they haven't figured it out. Every day, value people, think of ways to add value to people, look for ways to add value to people, do things that add value to people. Number 5, every day I encourage others to add value to people. Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing with you right now. I'm encouraging you to add value to other people. Wow. I have privileged in one of my businesses to have a coaching company called the John Maxwell Team. Some of my coaches are here today. We started 6 years ago. We now have 20,000 coaches in 142 countries of the world. Fastest growing, top coaching company. And you know what? We teach them every time they come. They come every 6 months to Orlando, and we teach all of our new ones when they come in the John Maxwell Team DNA. And right at the top of that list is we value people. In fact, I tell my coaches, you are people of value that add value to others. That's who you are. You're people of value that add value to others. If you don't value yourself, you won't value anyone else. That's what Jesus said. You got to love yourself so you can love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. And we teach that. And it's so exciting. I've got 20,000. They're my legacy. They're the legs to my legacy. I got 20,000 legs running around. Yeah, I do. Going to 50,000. It's a movement. If you want to know, I've not done this, but if you want to know how to be a John Maxwell Team coach, just go to johnmaxwellteam.com. We'll put you on a. Now, you don't want to do this unless you want to climb. We're all climbers. We're not sliders. So if you're a slider, don't go there, please, please, please. You'll mess us up. Your name is Charlie. We'll have to drag you around all the time. Every day I do those 5 things. Value people. Think of ways to add value to people. Look for ways. Do things. And encourage others to value people. And you can do that. Every one of you can start today because today matters.
So in the book, you really go into detail, and I'd actually like to dive into this part of it now about how to cultivate other leaders. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, man, there's an element of this where it's like, you even say it in the book. I was literally like, oh, please tell me he addresses this. where okay, you have the leadership table, you're giving people the chance to be a leader, but some people don't get invited to the leadership table.
Yeah.
And so how do you deal with that? Like, how do you keep the organization functional? How do you say the hard things? You know, if somebody has a blind spot, at a minimum, if they're not effective, you can't have them at the leadership table.
can't.
So like, how do you manage that?
Well, first of all, I think it's fair to say that everybody should have an invitation to the leadership table, because it's at the table where you learn about each other.
So tell everybody what the leadership table is.
Well, the leadership table, it's a phrase I use to let everybody sit down, and just like you come to a table to have a meal or you go to a table to play a game, here you come to the table to sit with other leaders. And at that table, the discussion's going to be leadership. And they're going to be talking about decisions they're having to make. They're going to be asking questions about things that they need to do as a leader. And so you're in this leadership environment where, and you're going to participate, and you're going to be able to ask questions, and you're probably going to be given a project. You know, okay, now that the table's done today, let's go out and do this. But what happens is at that leadership table, everybody ought to be able to come there, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to stay there. Because there are some people who come to the table and they just aren't to the capacity yet where they need to be. And so that's where you get into what I call the tough conversations. And what I say to people all the time is that I care enough for you to be honest with you. In our John Maxwell company, we do a lot of corporate training with the 5 levels of leadership. And in the 5 levels of leadership, level number 2 is relationships, the connecting factor, but level number 3 is production. And anybody that's gotten it knows that it's one thing to be a friend and it's good to be together, it's even good to work together, but you do have to produce. We got to have some results down the road. And so that's a big gap for many people to go from a relationship level to a leadership level where now we've got to get you to become effective and fruitful. And I think that if I truly value you as a person, I'm going to share with you how you can improve. And it's one thing to say, I don't like what you're doing, but it's more important to say, there's some things you're going to have to do to improve there. And I think you ought to always give people a path to improvement. And then it's their decision. The 2 questions you ask all the time: can he or can she and will he or will she? Can the person is all about competence and ability. Will is probably more about attitude. But what we've discovered is that it's very important to keep an authenticity and an honesty. And I think it's also very important for the leader to share their difficulties. And I was with Johnson & Johnson one time, speaking to about 100 presidents of companies. It was kind of like an appreciation day by Johnson & Johnson. So they brought in all the companies they work with. And so it was what they call President's Day. And I was telling the presidents, I said, now, you need to go home or go back to your offices and share with the people your weaknesses. And that room just bowed right up. It was so much fun. I mean, they were just resistant. I mean, they were stiff-arming me big time. So I called a little break and said, I'll sign some books. And so I had a CEO standing beside me while I'm signing books, and he's not happy. It's a rain cloud for sure. And so finally they all left, and he said, I really disagree with you about telling people about your weaknesses. He said, you and then he gave me this kind of old-time leadership talk about, never let him see you flinch,
Right.
So I'm letting kind of go through his process. It was, I could be his therapist for a day. So when he finished, I said, I think you're operating your leadership under a misunderstanding. He said, what misunderstanding would that be? I said, you think your people don't know your weaknesses.
Word.
They already know about it. In fact, they're talking about it. But I said, the reason I want you to go back and share your weaknesses with your people is so that they know that you know. It'll make them just feel a lot better. Oh, thank God he knows. He knows. But I think that even in having the difficult conversations with people, I think that when you're open with your own areas of that you're working on, I think that's very important. And in fact, one of the things that we teach in our companies is
have upfront expectations. And I learned a long time ago, again, all the things I'm teaching now, it's because I did them wrong in the beginning. It's not like I have this wisdom. It's like if you do it wrong, you either keep doing it wrong and never build anything, or else you change. And when I started off, I was very relational, so I wouldn't have tough conversations with people. I thought, I'll friendship them through the process.
Yes.
And then I realized that's, so we just teach our people to have upfront expectations, and basically we just sit down and say, Tom, I'm glad you're going to join the team. Now, we're going to have some tough conversations down the road. That's just going to happen. Today it's a kind of like a high five day, but we'll have days when we just have to sit down, look at each other, and deal with some issues. And I just think that if you tell people up on the front end, then when you have them, it's not so personal. I mean, it's personal, but at least they knew that it was coming. I think leaders prepare their people for not only the good days and the touchdowns, but for the adversity also. No doubt about it.
All right, let's get really specific. What are some of the keys to fostering the growth of leaders within your organization?
First of all, I think that, Tom, I think 90% of leaders never develop leaders. I think they just have followers. And one of the reasons is a lot of leaders don't really want other leaders. Leaders are hard to lead. I mean, it's like herding cats, I mean, they just don't naturally fall in line. So I think that, first of all, most people don't really develop leaders. But in developing leaders, there are three things that are just absolutely essential. In the book, The Leader's Greatest Return, I wrote The Leader's Greatest Return because I truly believe that the greatest return a leader ever gets is developing other leaders, because that's when you really begin to compound. And I think there are three essentials always in developing leaders. First of all is your own example. People do what people see. So if I'm going to develop leaders, I have to be a good leader. Maybe the greatest leadership words ever said was follow me. Just follow me. Watch me. Because what Stanford research says that 89% of what we know visually. And so I think, first of all, in developing leaders, you have to model it. The second thing I think in developing leaders is you have to be intentional. I think that you have to commit yourself to finding them, which I talk about in the book, letting them come to the leadership table, discerning what kind of capacity they have. And then I think you have to intentionally have a program of development for them. I think you have to have a process. I think of all the money we spend in companies in marketing and in advertising. And I was speaking one time, this was several years ago, for AT&T. And when I was introduced to their maybe top 300 leaders, I was going to spend an afternoon with them. The guy said something very interesting. He said to them, you're our most appreciable asset. And of course, that's a wonderful statement there. Everybody loves that. And I came up behind him and I said, it's true and it's not true. I said, you're really only an appreciable asset if somebody intentionally develops you and you intentionally develop yourself. We don't automatically get better. And this is a big miss. I think that we think, well, if I just automatically go to work or if I automatically do my job, that I'll just grow. And I had a mentor when I was in my 20s just say, John, growth is not automatic. Getting older is automatic, but getting better isn't. And there's a world of difference. So I think that you have to be an example, and I think you have to be incredibly intentional in saying, okay, I'm going to have a leadership culture. I'm going to develop leaders. And the third thing I think that is just overlooked consistently in developing leaders is that you've got to empower them. You have got to let them run the ball. Because the only way you learn leadership is by practicing leadership. So I think what a good leader does is she sets the stage for a successful run. You want to get some wins under their belts for them. And I just think that it's an empowering environment where you release people. The problem is leaders will stop and say, well, but they don't do it as well as I do it. And so that's not the point. The only way they can ever do it as well as that you do it is for them to do it. And then for you to coach them and come alongside of them and say, okay, here's how you can do that better. And we have kind of like a 5-step equipping process. I do it, you're with me, you do it, I'm with you, you do it, and then you do it and someone else is with you, and it's a multiplication process there. So I think those three things of the example, the intentionality, and the empowerment, that's, I think, what develops a leadership culture that really establishes the fact that if you want to learn how to lead, this is a place where, where you can do that. I say this in the book, by the way, that when I would bring people on the team, I would share with them that I wanted them to work themselves out of a job.
Yeah.
And pretty much I would just say, okay, you've got the job. I want you to do it well. Let me see you do it well. But while you're doing it well, you find somebody to replace you. And that's how you, boy, that's really how you develop. You talk about a farm team of leaders. And if you can work yourself out of your job, I'll give you another job. Mark Cole, who he and I are owners of the company now, and he's the CEO and president, but he started off in the stockroom 20 years ago.
Whoa.
20 years ago. And I was just asking him recently in a conversation, I said, how many jobs did you work your way out of to get where you are? He said 9.
Wow.
9 times. And I tell people, first of all, I can't promote you unless you got somebody to replace you. Mm-hmm. So the first part of promotion isn't just getting better till I want to bring you up. First part of promotion is to show me some person that we're not going to have a big loss if I do bring you up. And 9 times he worked himself out of a job, found somebody else, and said, "Okay, come on up," until one day he's where he is.
So I want to talk to you about serving others. A great leader serves others. In my 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership book, I talk about the law of addition, and the law of addition is that leaders add value to others by serving them. And I am not a positional leader. I try to be a serving leader, which means I don't have people work for me. I have people work with me. I work with people. And we just help each other to grow and to get better ourselves. And I say that because when I was a young leader in my 20s, I heard a man named Zig Ziglar one time from the stage say that if you will help people get what they want, then they'll help you get everything that you want and need in your life. And this was a paradigm shift for me because I was a young leader and I wasn't interested in helping people get what they want. I was interested in people helping me get what I want. So I was talking about my vision and get on my leadership train. And it was all about helping me. And that day I walked out of that session, I thought, I'm doing it wrong. Instead of asking people to serve me, I need to serve them. Instead of asking people to add value to me, I need to add value to them. So how am I going to do that? And how am I going to do that successfully? Well, I heard that almost 50 years ago. And now with 45, 50 years of serving other people, let me tell you what serving others has taught me. Number one, it's taught me to value people. It's taught me to change from this idea, you need me, to go to the idea, I need you. Today I'm 75, and I'm incredibly grateful for the people that I have around me because what I've learned is this, that the more that I've served them, the more that I value them. And the more that I value them, the more value they bring to me. This is incredible. Once we understand how servant leadership works, it's just like we'll never go back to any other kind of leadership again. So serving others has taught me, number one, to value people. Number two, serving others has taught me to value teamwork. One of us is not as smart as all of us. In my early days, if I would get an idea, because I was a young leader, I wanted to make sure everybody thought it was my idea, so I wouldn't share it with anybody. I would think about it, I'd work about it, I'd develop a system, a plan, and then I wanted to walk in and I wanted to sit down and say, okay, here's my incredible plan. And so for many years, I didn't do shared thinking, and I didn't value the teamwork. And then one day I realized that if I just took my idea to the people, in just a few hours, they would make my idea better. In fact, now I've done this thousands of times over the last, 3 or 4 decades. I have never taken an idea to my team that after we talked about it and shared it, every time they've made the idea better. They just have. And so when I started really serving people, I just began to value teamwork and see the return on teamwork. The third thing was when I started serving people, I just became greatly fulfilled. And I became greatly fulfilled because I was going now from success to significance, and I teach often success is about what I accomplish, significance, it's all about you. And the moment that I started valuing people, I found that fulfillment comes in living a significant life. It doesn't come in living a life for myself. And so as I served others, I began to value teamwork. I began to be fulfilled in my life. And so I sat down after understanding the value of serving others, and I asked myself a simple question. What questions can I ask myself that would better help and serve you? And so I asked myself questions such as, what do the people need? Well, I didn't know what the people needed. So I went to them and I said, I would like to lead you well. I'd like to serve you well. What do you need? And they began to talk to me about what they needed. I literally have written all my books off of the fact that when I was in my late 20s, I came to the conclusion that if I could help people do 4 things well, if I could really serve them in these 4 areas, they would be very successful. If I could help them develop relationships, if I could help them learn how to equip others, if I could help them have a phenomenal attitude in life, and if I could help them to lead. And so I just took those 4 things, and every book I wrote was either relationships, equipping, attitude, leadership. It was, again, serving and asking myself, well, what do the people need? And then, once you define what the people need, then you say, okay, now how do I meet that need? What do I do? And in the case I just gave you, I started writing books for people. But I started asking questions. I started listening. I started developing what I call heart skills, which are skills that you show people that you truly care for them. And so when I started valuing people and asking these servanthood questions, I just began to ask myself, how can I inspire other people to serve other people? And the answer is very simple, by modeling it. So with my team, I constantly serve them. In fact, it's kind of a joke because when you watch our team together, we're always looking for ways to serve each other. And it's almost like, who's the king of the servers? Who's the king of the serving hill? I did this for you. I did that for you. But it's all in fun. But it's all because we understand that when I started serving people, I started valuing people. I started valuing what teamwork was all about, and I really started to be fulfilled in my life. I think you're going to find that in your servanthood also. I just want to encourage you to learn what I have said and practice it this month and serve people and see if it doesn't bring you maybe a little bit greater sense of fulfillment because you've begun to live this life of significance. I want to talk to you about, what is a problem? And back in 1979, I wrote my first book, okay? And it was called Think on These Things. And one of my chapter titles was What is a Problem? So now we're going back, what are we going back? We're going back 42 years, 43 years. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read to you what I wrote in that little chapter that day about what a problem is and what does it look like. So I said, first of all, in English, obviously not in Spanish, but in English, the letter P that starts with the problems, it stands for the fact that they are predictors. Problems move us. The question is not when crisis comes, are we moved? The question is, where did we move to? Did we swim upstream and better ourselves, or did we drift to an undesired location? But problems move us. They may move you, they move me, they get us out of our comfort zone. Problems don't. The reason people don't like problems is problems don't let you stay the same. They require you to make a decision. They require you and I to to do something with whatever problem it is. So when you think of a problem, it's a predictor. The second thing that I want you to know about a problem is that it's a reminder. And what it reminds you and me is the fact that life is difficult, that life is not easy, that you're going to have to work to achieve what you want to work, that there's no such thing as coasting your way to success. You know, if you saw a person on the top of the mountain of success and you asked them how they got there, they wouldn't look at you and say, I have no clue. They'd say, wow, took a long time. It was a lot of hard work. Well, problems are reminders to all of us that leadership's not easy. Leading people isn't always easy. Every one of us have people in our organization that they have problems, and they sometimes become problems. They're just good, healthy reminders that leadership is tough, and so is life. But the letter O in the word problems means that there are opportunities. And that is huge. I don't want you to miss this. Almost every opportunity that I've ever had in my life that has been a big one came to me as a problem. And what are you going to do about that? And how are you going to change that? When I started my international leadership program, I did so because when I would travel internationally, I would see that people didn't understand leadership. And so I finally one day said, well, yeah, I think I've got to go travel and help people understand that. And it opened up an amazing work until we've trained leaders in every country of the world. And oh my gosh, it's been phenomenal what we've received as far as a return. But it began as a problem. Now it was an opportunity. The letter B in problems means that letters are blessings. And what I mean by that is very simple. They're kind of wake-up calls for us. There's a tendency for us just to, coast, just kind of, be an automatic. Automatic is just not good, but people love automatic. I mean, in automatic, you don't have to think. You can let your habits kind of take control, and you don't have to be creative. And we do this the same way, and we go to the same place. People love automatic. And one of the beautiful things about problems is they get us out of automatic. They kick us, they kick us over the fence to a territory. They kick us over the fence to a territory that we didn't even want to go. But once we get there, we realize, the blessings that they are going to be in our life. The letter L in problems stands for the fact that they're lessons. Every problem has a lesson to teach us. In fact, when I interview successful people, and I ask them, what's the greatest lesson you've ever learned? Almost every time, not every time, but almost every time, they'll talk about a failure in their life. They'll talk about a very difficult, dark period, and they'll say, it was in that time that I became a person of character. It was in that time where I began to make the changes that I need to make. So problems are lessons. The letter E in the word problems are everywhere. I'm always amazed at when people say, well, if I could just leave this company and go over there, it's this grass is greener on the other side type of thinking. And I just want you to know that problems are everywhere. You can't escape them. In fact, there's an expression I love that says, no matter where you are, there you are. And I watch people sometimes, they even try to get away from themselves. Just understand, I've got problems, you've got problems, all God's children. We got problems. Everybody has problems. So it's not like something I can do or someplace I can go that'll help me have less problems. It's life. The letter M in problem stands for messages. They're messages. It's like the dashboard of a car. The red light comes on. Okay, we got an oil problem, or it's sending us a signal that we need to kind of be aware of. It's saying, John, pay attention to this, and problems do that to us. They're messages. They're messages to us that are kind of forerunners that be ready, be prepared, anticipate difficulty. And then the last letter in the word problems is the letter S, and that means they're solvable. And I love that. I love that very much. I don't know what problem you have right now, but let me just say this to you. There's always an answer. I'm always amazed at people say, well, you know, there's just no answer. Oh, there's always an answer. Now, maybe you haven't found it, but there's always an answer. And when you have the mindset that there's always an answer, what do? You stay in the game because you're looking for the answer. In fact, let me tell you this, there's not only always an answer, there's usually more than one answer. In other words, whatever I'm doing, to be honest with you, there's probably even a better way of doing what I'm doing. So I never stay satisfied. I just say, there's an answer, I'm going to find it out, and there's probably even a better answer. And that allows me to really lead well. I just close with this thought. You know, you can't moan and lead at the same time. You really can't. And when you moan as a leader, who wants to be on a moaning leaders team? So next time you look at problems, look at it from the perspective I gave you, and look at them and kind of say, hey, I'm ready to tackle that problem. It'll make you a better person, and it'll make you a better businessman. It'll make you more successful. Hi, this is John Maxwell. I have given my entire life to help people learn to be real good leaders. It's been very fulfilling because it is true that everything rises and falls on leadership, and when leaders learn to lead correctly, they really do succeed in their life. Today, I want to talk to you about one of the attributes and contributions that leaders give other people, and that's what makes leadership so important. I would like to talk to you about the fact that leaders lift others. In other words, wherever you see a leader, the people around that leader will always go to higher ground. My friend Johnny Cash, in our time of mentoring and just talking together, constantly brings up to me in my mentoring time with him, John, I have a great desire to help other people, and I want to make their lives better for them. And he works really hard at that. And it's one of the things I greatly appreciate about him. Every time I look into his heart is to lift up other leaders. Now, we've heard the expression that it's lonely at the top. But I've always said that a good leader never says that, because think about it for a moment. If you're at the top all by yourself, you didn't lift anybody. You didn't bring anybody to the top with you. In fact, if you're only at the top by yourself, you're really not a leader. Honestly, you're just a hiker. Leaders lift other people. Recently, I was doing a lesson on fulfillment, because there are so many people, instead of living a fulfilling life, they lead and live an empty life. And I was trying to distinguish the difference between what is emptiness in a person's life and what makes them feel empty, and what is fulfilling in a person's life and what brings great joy and fulfillment to them. In that lesson, I was talking about that people that live a fulfilling life, they value people and they add value to those people. Now, that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying lifting others. If you as a leader value people and you add value to people, trust me, my friend, without any doubt, you will lift other people. I have spent my life doing that exact thing. In fact, the other day I had someone come and ask me, they said, a little bit about your journey. How did this happen that you began to be what I would call a leader that lifted other people? Well, honestly, at 75, it's easy for me to understand my life as I look backwards. It was Steve Jobs who said, when we look forward, it's hard to connect the dots. But when we look backwards, then it just is kind of natural to see how things just fell in place. In my life, back in 1973, I went to a convention in Waterloo, Iowa, and I heard Charles Tremendous Jones, and he said that I would be the same person I was in 5 years unless I met new people and I read more books. In other words, Charles Tremendous Jones said to me that the people I associate with and the books that I read are going to determine
how successful I will be in life. And from that very moment, I determined that I was going to be around great people and I was going to help people become great. I've often said that when you have a great dream and you have a great team, then all of a sudden you can realize everything that you want to accomplish. Now, I've known those who had a big dream and a bad team, and that's a nightmare. So how did I lift up people? How do you lift up others as leaders? I'm going to share with you now some material, some thoughts that really I've never shared with other people before. This is for you. This is for your training. This is for your growth. This is for your development. This is to help you to be a leader that lifts up other people. So how do we do this? How do I lift others? How do you lift others? Number one, I think to lift other people, it starts with you. I think you have to have a desire to become great. You have to have a desire inside of you to do great things. I can still remember as a very young leader in my 20s, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to make a difference. I really did. That I wanted to make a difference in my life. I wanted to make a difference in your life. I wanted to make a difference in the people's lives around me. And I had this desire. It was a passion of mine. Napoleon Hill said, the starting point of all achievement is desire. I believe that with all of my heart. I have found that great people, great leaders, you don't have to motivate them. You don't have to say, hey, get up, get out of bed, get into the game. They already have that passion. They already have that desire. And I did. And so because I had this great desire, this desire to be great, I went to one of my mentors. His name was Elmer. I call him affectionately E.T. He's still alive. He's older than me. He's 90 years old. But he has been a friend and a mentor for many, many years of my life. And so I'm very, very young. I'm in my 20s, and I go to E.T. and I ask him, how do I become great? What he said to me that day was life-changing. And for, 50 years of my life, I've been following those words. Here's what he said. If you want to become great, go to great events. Seek out great people. Ask great questions. Read great books. Find great mentors. And then he said, above all, attempt to do great things. When E.T. told me that 50 years ago, I marked those words. I said, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to great events. I'm going to seek out great people. I'm going to ask great questions. I'm going to read great books. I'm going to find great mentors in my life, and I'm going to attempt to do great things. If you want to lift others, the first thing you want to do is just have a desire inside of you to be great. The second characteristic I think that you need to possess is you need to do what my mentor Elmer Towns told me to do as a very young leader. Go to where great people go. Wow. I have discovered that this is the secret to having a faster pace on my success journey. My mama used to talk to me and say, John, birds of a feather flock together. Average people hang with average people. People that are successful hang with people that are successful. My father knew that. And as I was growing up, he took time to introduce me to great people. Wow, I was in the 7th grade when he took me to meet his long-distance mentor himself, Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the great book, The Power of Positive Thinking. In Columbus, Ohio, 7th grader, I met Norman Vincent Peale. When I was in the 11th grade, I met E. Stanley Jones, another great man, a great missionary, a friend of Gandhi's, a man that influenced the world, a great writer. Elmer Towns, my mentor, said and taught me at a young age what he called the hot poker principle. The hot poker principle is just very simple. If you have a fire in the fireplace, if you put the poker in the fire or by the fire, it's only a matter of time till it gets hot. If you remove the poker away from the fire, it's only a matter of time till it gets cold. And Elmer said, John, get around hot people, get around great people so you can stay hot, so you can stay passionate. That's exactly what I have done. When I was in my late 20s, I wrote a lesson that has been life-changing for many people about how to create a growth environment. In it, I just simply say, listen carefully, a growth environment is a place where others are ahead of you, where you're continually challenged, where your focus is forward, where the atmosphere is affirming, where you're often out of your comfort zone, where you wake up excited, where failure is not your enemy, where others are growing, where people desire change, and where growth is modeled and expected. Those are the 10 things that make a great growth environment. The other day, when I was preparing this lesson for you, I was looking at those characteristics of a growth environment, and all of a sudden it hit me. 5 of the 10 very essential items to have a growth environment in your life are having great people around you. Others are ahead of you. The atmosphere is affirming. Others are growing. People desire change. Growth is modeled and expected. 5 out of the 10 are specifically about great people. Mark Cole, the CEO of my companies, calls it the power of proximity. He talks about the fact that if you really want to do something great, you've got to be around great people, because there is a contagiousness that happens when you're around those type of people. And so I've looked at myself and I've asked myself many times, how did I become great? And I'd have to say, without any doubt, I not only had a desire to be great, but I put myself around great people. And again, that's what's so exciting to me about this program, because you're in these lessons, you're going to be exposed to great people who have great ideas and great thinking that can really help you to become great. In my early years, when I was very young, inexperienced, and not known at all as a leader, my mentors were my books. Back then, we didn't have all the incredible technology that you have today. But I was mentored from afar by books or by tapes that I could listen to. So, if you really want to lift others up, you have to have a desire to be great, and you have to go where the great people go. Where are the great people? Thirdly, if you really want to be great and be a leader that can lift others, you have to do what great people do. Again, many times we look at great people and we say, wow, I would like to have that title. I'd like to have that position. I'd like to have that money. I'd like to have that influence. And we don't realize that all those things that we want are a result of what great people do every day. The things that we don't even see, the behind the scenes, the hidden disciplines that keep people doing the great things every day so that their greatness shows when they're out in public. A book that I grew up on and was mentored on was Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And when people talk to me about doing what great people do, I say, go to that book. And I would suggest you need, if you haven't, you need to read that book. And if you have read the book, you need to practice the 7 habits that Stephen Covey talks about, the things that you have to do to be great. What did he say? He said, number 1, be proactive. In other words, take action. There is no success, none, without action. Nobody ever reflected their way to success. Nobody ever thought their way to success. Nobody ever hoped their way to success. No one with good intentions ever had success. It takes action. Action is always associated with success. Be proactive. Number 2, begin with the end in mind. This is all about intentionality. This is all about seeing the big picture. This is all about don't do something stupid today that'll mess up the long-term journey of your life. Everything that you do, look at your dream, look at your goal, do everything with the end in mind. The third thing that Stephen Covey suggests that we do is to put first things first. In other words, prioritize your life. All leaders know activity is not necessarily accomplishment. I know a lot of busy, hardworking people that are not successful at all. So what we have to do is we have to say, what's the most important? Put first things first. Don't put first things last. Hey, put last things last, put first things first. Number 4, Stephen Covey says, think win-win. I have lived my life following that principle. If I'm going to work with you, I'm going to ask myself a simple question. What is the win for you and what's the win for me? I never get into any relationship where I win and you're going to lose. Or I'm not going to get in a relationship where you're going to win and I'm going to lose. No, I'm going to get into a relationship where together we both are better. Together, we both win. The fifth thing that Stephen Covey talked about that was so effective is he said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. He talked about listening. He talked about caring for people in such a way that you allow them to tell their story. And you listen and care and are attentively drawing their story out. In other words, if I understand you well, you'll have a desire, because I listen and care, to understand me. But I must, again, as a leader, I must go first. So many times leaders, they just want to be understood. They want to make sure that they got their vision out, they got their directions out, and it's kind of, now listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. But if you really want to lift others and you really want to grow in this area, you don't start with yourself. You start with your people and say, okay, tell me your story. What are your dreams? What is it in your life that you would really like to do that would make a difference in people's life? I love those words. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. The sixth thing that Stephen Covey talks about that is so important for us to, again, be leaders who do what great people do is he talks about synergizing. And if you really read the chapter, it's really about teamwork. It's about coming together. It's what Mother Teresa said when she said, you can do things I cannot do. I can do things you cannot do, and together we can do great things. Synergizing means that we come together as a team. One is too small of a number to achieve greatness. When we synergize, we lead people in a desired vision, but we do it together as a team. The last thing that Stephen Covey said is sharpen the saw. In other words, develop yourself personally. When he said sharpen the saw, he's talking about cutting down trees. And you all know that if I don't stop long enough to sharpen the saw, if it's not the best instrument I can possibly use to cut that lumber, it's not going to cut very well. And so we have to constantly keep sharp. We have to constantly grow. We have to constantly learn. We have to constantly improve our life. Okay, we're talking about how do we become leaders that lift others? And we've talked about so far 3 things. We've talked about how important it is for us to have a desire to be great. We have talked about go where great people go, and then do what great people do. Now I'm going to talk to you about number 4, be unforgettable. Be unforgettable. My friend Jack Welch used to talk about getting out of the people pile. You see, in every organization, there are just a lot of people. So how do you and I distinguish ourselves? I mean, how do we get out of the people pile until they see us and they notice us? And what I want to share with you today is something that's very important, and it's just life-changing. If you want to get out of the people pile, just commit your life to living a life beyond expectations. I want you to exceed expectations. I want you to set your bar, your personal bar, your productivity bar, your life conduct bar. I want you to set it high. You see, only 15% of the people in life even meet expectations. So this people pile, it's just got a whole bunch of people that are just average. And 15% exceed expectations or meet expectations. And of those 15% that meet expectations, only 2% exceed expectations. So I want to encourage you in your life to live a life that says, I exceed the expectations of other people around me. In fact, the way I look at it is this. When I'm getting ready to speak for a company, I do a pre-conference call, and one of the questions I ask them is, what are your expectations of me? What do you want to see happen when I come and speak for you? And they tell me, and I write it down. Now, when they give that to me, I look at what I wrote down, and those expectations they have of me, that's not my ceiling. That's my floor. I stand on that. I make sure that's going to be done. Now I ask myself the question, how am I going to exceed expectations? How am I going to be so unforgettable that I'm irreplaceable? And they look and they say, I got to have John back because he truly does make a difference in my life. How am I going to do that? Let's review just for a second. For me to be a leader that can lift other people, I have to have a great desire to be great. I have to go where great people go, do what great people do. I have to be unforgettable, exceed those expectations. And number 5, I have to be greater on the inside than I am on the outside. Wow, this is huge. You see, when we look at successful people, what we normally do is we see what they have accomplished, the tangible things on the outside. But I am here to tell you that greatness begins on the inside first. My wonderful friend, Truett Cathy, was the founder of Chick-fil-A, this incredible, best company to work for in America restaurant chain. When Chick-fil-A was just kind of starting to get momentum, the people around him said, we need to get bigger, we need to get bigger. And Truett Cathy said, no. He said, we need to get better. He said, when we get better, when we improve ourselves, when we get better, the people, the customers, the clients, they'll insist that we get bigger. Our job is to be big on the inside. Our job is to be greater on the inside than we are on the outside. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that I'll be different than most people. For example, many people live a life of scarcity. I live a life of abundance. Most people, in relationships with others, they either take the low road or the middle road. They either kind of, well, if you'll treat me good, I treat you good. You treat me bad, I'll treat you bad. I take the high road. You see, I take the road where if you treat me bad, I'll still treat you good. I will always be bigger in my spirit and my attitude than you. Trust me. I was talking about high road the other day, and a person came up to me at the conference and said, the high road is a toll road, but the price is worth it. When they said that to me, I thought how true that is. I am always going to treat people better than they treat me. I'm always going to live a life of abundance, not scarcity. And I'm going to choose sowing over reaping. I'm always going to sow seeds of goodness into people's life. You see, most people, they get up and they look at life for that day and they say, I wonder what life is going to bring to me today. I wonder what it's going to give me. I wonder what I'm going to get out of life. That's how they think. I never think about reaping. I always think about sowing. In fact, the success of my day is determined by the seeds I sow, not by the harvest that I want to reap. So I'm going to constantly do more for others than they do for myself. I'm going to constantly be greater on the inside than I'm on the outside. Now I'm preparing you. All the things I've given you, I'm preparing you to lift other people. So number 6, live out your great vision. Now, what I mean by living out your great vision, it's one thing to tell others about your vision, but it's another thing to show others your vision. When I tell you my vision, I'm a vision caster. But when I show you my vision, I become a vision character. And when I can show and tell my vision, I become what I call a vision champion. And great people are attracted by great success. So my credibility as a leader isn't what I say I can do, it's what I actually do. So what I do is I bring people with me. The people that I'm mentoring, the people that I'm leading and lifting, I take them with me. I take them with me to have leadership experiences. I say, come and be with me and watch this and observe this. This begins absolutely life-changing. When a person sees the vision that you have created, they buy into it so quickly because now they get to be a participant of that vision. Now I get to the very essence of this lesson. If you want to lift others, you've got to develop great people. When people ask me at 75, what is the number one reason for my success? It's very obvious. I have developed great people in my life. And there are 2 principles for developing great people. And those 2 principles are, number 1, growth requires people development. I have to spend time developing people. Growing organizations grow people. So growing leaders is at the top of my agenda. And personal development, my own personal growth, precedes the development of others.
Well, today's topic is titled An Intentional Leader's Guide to Influence. And if you want to become someone who can positively influence other people, you really need to develop qualities around that, qualities of integrity, and then live them out every day. And make sure, the way that you are leading, the way that you are talking is how you're living that out. And the key here is those don't happen by accident. They're learned. You may have an intrinsic, maybe some core to some of those competences or qualities, but you really got to live them out and you got to develop them. And in order to do that, it takes intentionality. And so, Perry, just talk to us a little bit about the title today and where we're going on this content.
Yeah, so we have a piece of content based on a book that John wrote some years ago called Developing the Leader Within You. And of course, we believe leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So you're really developing the influence that you have with others. I was doing on a group call around this topic of developing the leader within you, and noticed that the idea of what is influence, how do you gain it, how do people see you as a person of influence? How does that happen? And it really is this word intentional. There are intentional things we need to do. We have a couple other podcasts where we've talked about some practical ways to build influence. I really like this lesson on looking at some really the mindset. I love John's title, the leader within you. Is that how do you develop these attributes in you?
Love it. Well, when John teaches the intentionality of influence, he shares a handful of ideas that can make your intentional efforts pay off. And so Perry and I are just going to kind of bounce back and forth with a couple of these ideas and share them with you as we get started. The first one is model consistency of character. I think when you do this, it builds trust, which we talk about, trust being the currency to all influence and leadership. I think you create a stable environment as a leader. And you may say, well, how do I go about doing this? which is a fair question. But I think as leaders, then, if you have clear values and principles, reliable decision making. I can think back to some leaders that I've had where their decision making was not reliable. Not saying it's here, but previously that has been the case. I think if you have emotional stability, we talk about EQ a lot as leaders, and just remember that as we talk about this consistency of character, consistency doesn't necessarily mean that it's just rigid. It's really about having stability, reliability, and trustworthiness that allows you to be able to do that.
I love that. And the key word is consistency of character. We work with a lot of leaders, and I don't know that I have one that I think is trying not to uphold the highest character.
Right.
We tend to, if you're
That's
in
good.
leadership, you are tending to. You're not trying to deceive or hurt. You're trying to uphold the highest of character. What I have noticed, though, when it comes to consistency, and this is true. This was true for me for a number of years. Was, are you the same person? Are you the same character in every situation you're in? At home, at work, on the golf course, at the gym, in the workplace, at the church, in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Are you the same person? And I know, just speaking for my past, it was I can be 2 different people, 3 different people, depending on who I'm with. That is not consistency of character.
Yeah.
And so one of the big learnings I had to make was determine who you are. What is the character you want to live to? And then be that. And don't apologize for it. Don't protect this group from it and not that group. Are you consistent in how you walk things out? And is your talk consistent in every constituency that you're hanging with?
We do this values card exercise, and you just made me think about 8 out of 10 times they're like, now are we doing this for the values here at work or at home?
Yeah.
And we're like, it shouldn't be.
You have different values?
You have different values, and so it just made me think about that. And so getting into the place where you're consistent, no matter where you are, I think is key.
And number 2 is another one you think, well, yeah, but I want to hear what you think about this, though. It says, employ honest communication. Employ honest communication. I thought, well, I don't know a lot of people that are trying to be dishonest about their communication, but this is not what we're talking about here. You think about a person of influence. Has that consistency of character. They speak in a way that is very clear. That is, we talk about clear as kind. They don't shield you from stuff. They don't protect you. They don't give you just what you need to know. They don't hold back. They are very honest, open, and consistent again in their communication. And you can generally tell that when they're talking, you're getting the straight scoop.
Yeah.
There's no nothing you have to read between the lines. You don't have to figure out what did they mean, no innuendo, those types of things. It is a developing an honesty of my communication, direct.
I think different levels of leadership, at times as leaders, you will have communication that you can't share at the moment. However, if that's the case, be honest about that, right? Like to your point, they can sense that. You and I can sense it. Everybody that's listening can sense it when someone's communicating to them and they're like, I don't think I'm getting the whole story. Like there's something behind there. And so I love that as being the next one that you brought up. Well, the third one is value transparency. Speaking of communication, feeding right off what you just talked about, man, be open and honest with your communication. Encourage feedback both ways. Be transparent with what you're thinking. Allow your team and those that you influence to do the same thing. Address mistakes and failures. I put this one down there because, everybody knows when you make a mistake. And there's failures. It's okay to be transparent about it, and encourage that in your team and lead by example by doing that. In order for you to really kind of get to this valuing transparency, it is an ongoing effort that requires commitment to be able to do it. Because naturally, I think we as human beings in our flesh don't necessarily want to do this, right? We want to look all buttoned up and
look my best.
Thinking about maybe in the past, walking out of my house as a kid, my mom's like, now, everybody put your smiles on. We don't talk about what just happened inside the house, right? And we should value transparency, not necessarily that.
I love your direction on a bit about vulnerability. Is that don't hide your mistakes and faults. That it leads to you looking perfect, and nobody really likes perfect.
Yeah.
You're much more relatable if you're real, and you value that transparency. Often the example I give when I teach about this is that we tend to, and social media does this a lot. You're seeing the Perry front stage act,
Yeah.
and there's a curtain drawn behind me, and all you can see is what I want you to see.
Yeah.
The transparency of my life is I open the curtain, and you see the backstage act, which can be a little bit disastrous, chaotic, out of control sometimes. But it begins to give you a realization of my whole story. Now, this doesn't mean all my dirty laundry's out. No, but
Right.
there's too much information. But I don't mind sharing with my life to say I don't have it all together. I'm learning, and you can help me, and we can help each other. So the transparency, I think, adds to connection and trust.
That's good.
Is really that for that. This one kind of leads into this next one, exemplify humility. Are you an example of humility in your work? Do people see you as humble? And I love in Tim Elmore's book, The 8 Paradoxes of Leadership, paradox number 1 fascinated me because it said, can you be confident and humble at the same time? I thought, well, I really want to be a confident leader. We all want to be confident. But if I have that and no humility, I'm arrogant. Well, what if I'm all humble and no confidence? Then I'm kind of sheepishness or something. I don't know. You don't want that either.
Yeah.
So can I balance confidence and humility? And how do you do that? And a lot of times it's what you just said. It's about being a little more transparent, using the 3 most unused words in leadership. I don't know. Letting people know that you need them, admitting that you made a mistake, asking for help, asking for an opinion, asking for a point of view. All kinds of things that can open the door to humility.
I know we've talked about those 3 words before. I don't know. I was thinking when you just said that completely went out of my mind. And I thought, I am sorry. That's probably those. But that, like even just thinking about where you're at with humility, and because if my wife is listening, she'd be like, "That's absolutely 3 words that Chris doesn't say enough, right?" And so I didn't even think about that.
That's
You just
really
said
good.
that came to my mind because I think that shows humility. I was also thinking about, we work with leaders all the time on the 5 levels of leadership, and we talk about, you build your way up the levels, you never leave the level behind, but the other person gets to determine what level of influence you have with them. And so sometimes when we're talking about this with teams, to make an example, I'll walk up and I'll be like, you don't go up to a new team member that you have level 1 influence with and go, "Hi, my name's Chris Godey. Welcome to the team. I'm a level 5 leader. We're going to kill it," right? Like they go, "This dude's an idiot and I'm out of here." Right. And there's no humility in that in regards to your influence. And
You really have grown in that too, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's taken 27 years now. Just kidding. Well, the next one that I want to bring to your attention here is demonstrate your support for others. I think when you do this as a leader, you foster a positive, a productive environment in the team, and in that individual, it helps empower them. How do you go about doing this? Man, you've got to be an active listener. We hear this a lot as well. I think communication is always a competency we hear about when we're working with teams, but we also hear that, man, he or she just doesn't listen. And I think if we can really become good active listeners, I think we'll have support for other people. I think the other thing around this is I try to view my leadership or my influence as removing obstacles and barriers for people in order to support what they're there to do, what they're called to do, what they're gifted to do. And I think when you do that, then it demonstrates that you're supporting others on that team, and it will be it'll help your influence with them.
Yeah, key word for me there is others, and you just gave a great example. You are good at this, removing obstacles, barriers, clearing the way for the team to be effective, and that is an others-oriented mindset. And this demonstrating support for others, not trying to get others to demonstrate their support for you. And so I want to move away from a self-centered mindset to an others orientation. And when leaders have an others orientation, people know it. When we talk about, do the people on your team know you're for them, or are you looking for something from them? And I thought, if I'm demonstrating support for you, I have my antennae up looking to say, what do you need? What's in the way? What are the barriers? This is what you're so great at, saying, who do I need? I think you helped me yesterday. I had a question, wasn't trying to give you an assignment, but you said, no, I can get that real quick. And I said, no, I got it. This should be not an obstacle. This should be out of the way for everybody. So let me do that. That's an others-oriented mentality, and it really demonstrated your support for me, and you do that really well. Another one was about, seems simple, fulfill your promises. But and I'm going to tell you what I've learned about this recently was it's generally not the big, hairy, audacious promise that you say, I'm going to, like you just did yesterday, let me get that out of your way for you. it would have been easy for you to, I'll do that later. It's so simple, so easy. But you didn't. You took care of it right in the moment, and you fulfilled your promise. What I've learned about me is that one way I can break trust with others and lose influence is I'm on a call. Somebody says, man, I love that chart. Could you send me that chart? Of course, it's a no-brainer. Let me just, and I just say no-brainer. Yeah, glad to. And then a call ends, and then what I do, I go to the next call or move on to the next thing, and I don't do it. And while to me it's a tiny little chart, it's a chart. To them, it was a promise made that they are tracking viciously to say, Perry never sent me that. I have to ask 3 times. Every time I want something from Perry, I said, you know what? I'm changing. Got a little multicolored pen I see you're using. It was, if I make a commitment, if I make a promise in a call, in a face-to-face, in a conference room, I change colors of my pen and I write in my notes.
That's great.
In red, I just made a commitment. So I write that in. So at the end of the day or at the lunch break or whatever I do, I look at anything in red.
That's really good.
I need to fulfill that because that is looking like a promise to other people. And it seems so small to me, I just overlooked it. But it's not small to them. And if you want to continue to have influence and trust, do the small things really well.
Yeah, I love that you developed a system and a process to help yourself with that, because we all get busy and we do make promises and then just accidentally it just falls through the crack and we forget about it. So I love that you have a system that you have set up to be able to do that. The other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about this is making sure that we don't say yes to everything, because I have a bad habit to do that. We talk about being a recovering people pleaser. And so
be careful what you promise.
Yeah. And so, if it's something that maybe you're not going to have time for in the moment, I'd rather you say, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that, or no, I can't do that, versus saying yes and then not doing it, to your point. Not saying you would say no to somebody that asks for a chart, but I know that sometimes I'm like, yeah. And that gets me in trouble because then I don't fulfill those promises. So,
same thing.
Well, number 7, embrace an attitude of service. This what jumps out to me here is you're just really focusing on others. Again, going to another content piece that you've helped develop with us, which is Ascend to Servant Leadership. And that's really what it's all about. And it's not subservient, right? It's about having the focus on others. Talk just a little bit about just that course and the impact that it's had on you and some of the key points developed out of that. Because I think that's another great day of training for teams that really helps them with servant leadership.
Yeah, people say I like the idea of servant leadership, but could you call it something else because it seems weak?
Yeah.
And I just tell them it is the hardest thing you've ever done. It is becoming a warrior for your people. It is having this, as it says here, an attitude of service that when I look at my team, and matter of fact, influence, we didn't mention this a lot, but influence is 360. It's up, down, and across. So it's not just down to your team, it's across to your peers. It's up to your leader, to your supervisor. So how are you having an attitude of service and putting yourself in a servant leader mindset to really serve the needs? How do I lighten the load of my leader? How do I assist and grow the people next to me? How do I remove barriers and serve the people on my team so that they have success? It really is a 360-degree attitude of service that does that. And it's the hardest thing you've ever done.
Hard.
People say, it seems kind of weak. It's not weak. It's complete struggle.
Yeah. Simple but hard.
The last one we'll put on the table was encouraging two-way communication with the people you hope to influence. I love adding this one because the higher you go in leadership, the more it seems to be my voice only. And so I love this idea of share of voice and inviting people to have a point of view, inviting my team to speak. John using phrases like, all of us is smarter than one of us, and we're not going to be successful unless everybody wants me to be. I need to have people speaking in. And am I tapping into, well, first of all, the diversity? We talk about that. Am I being inclusive of this diverse team I've put together so that we have the best chance of getting the best ideas, not just my ideas. I see one way, and I don't need you thinking like me. I need you thinking like you. So inviting that voice into what we do.
I love that. I think that all of these things that we just talked about today, you're probably going, that's not earth-shattering. Well, we know that. I think the real question is kind of bringing those to light and just asking yourself, are we doing them? Are we living this out? And I think Perry and I shared as we went through a couple of these that, man, it's even hard for us to do that at times, and we let things go. And so just bringing them to kind of the forefront of your mind again, saying, hey, this is how you grow your influence. If you're intentional about these things, that it will happen. The key word there is intentional, because we've talked about our calendars and we've talked about our to-dos and all those things, and teaching classes, and yes, making promises and then not delivering. But man, how are we intentional about that? What is the system and the process that we've set up as leaders to be able to increase and grow our influence through doing that?
And I did that little exercise you just suggested. Take those 8, look at them, be honest with yourself. And I already mentioned fulfill promises. I had to do a realignment on, am I keeping the small promises I'm making? Of course, the big ones too, but especially I struggle with the small ones. I wrote down demonstrating my support for others. Sometimes I get a little bit too into myself and into what I'm doing, into what my to-do list is. I'm not looking around about how I can help the team, and that led to embracing an attitude of service. Am I actually actively, intentionally looking for ways to serve my leader, my peers, and my team to do that? So it's a great little exercise. Got to be honest. It could be a little hurtful, but you can grow from it.
Yeah, great self-awareness to go through these and ask yourself those questions.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.